A lot of times I say it's God's church here in Brewer. We have one visitor with us. Good to have you with us, young man. You are a special guest this morning. Appreciate you being here. Tommy, can you open some word of prayer?
Through your good faith and habit that gives us you what has come to work with you. Father, we lift up those that follow that for this freedom we have come to work with. Father, I pray for a hedge of protection around us from all places. Father, I say you bless today, Father, everything we do for glory and honor to you. Father, we love you and I praise you myself in Jesus Christ.
And most of y'all wasn't here this morning. Y'all missed the blessing. Keith's message this morning. Go back and watch it later on. And look forward to the blessing today for Jeremy. And tonight at 6:30 we'll start back with a regular service at 6:30. And Joe Dyson will be preaching tonight. And we'll have a training union class. Mr. Andy's going to do his class and Keith's Sunday school classroom. And Lisa is going to do her class for the little kids. And that'll be at 5:30 also. Y'all know Brother Tim's in the hospital. He didn't have a good night last night. Coughed. What time he wasn't sleeping, he coughed. He could do both. And coughed a good bit last night. The lung doctor said his pneumonia was a little worse this morning. And was going to talk to the other doctor about maybe giving him some more plasma. Didn't know if the other doctor would agree to it. Didn't know exactly what was going on. I'd like to have a special time of prayer for Brother Tim at this time. Ricky, would you lead us in a word of prayer for Brother Tim?
Father, Father, we thank you for another opportunity to come back to your house today and worship you. Lord, we just lift up Brother Tim to you. Pray that you be with him and his position taken care of. Lord, we know that you have a great healing power. Pray, Lord, this healing power that you have to be used on him to heal his body. Lord, just heal him. Lord, we know that there's others the sick that go to lift him up to the
Also starting this morning, we have the nurseries open. Miss Becky and several ladies have agreed to take time about keep the nursery during this service, during the second service. So y'all keep that in mind and bring the little ones. And Miss Melissa told me to be sure to tell everybody she really appreciated it. She felt the love from all the texts and calls and well wishes and things people have done for her and stuff. She really appreciated it, and she really felt the love through all this. And I kind of thought Brother Tim was doing a little better yesterday, and I figured he cheered pretty hard for Ole Miss and their loss, and then he cheered pretty hard for LSU and their loss. And so, you know, but he still had a lot of trouble breathing, and I think they had to come in during the night and give him a couple of breathing treatments and inhaler and stuff. It seems to help some, but I do remember him in prayer. And after the psalm service, Jeremy come and lead his Lord today. We have any other night? Y'all ready, man?
It is good to see you here this morning. And that's one thing about that choir. She just thrown everything. We're going to sing praise. I sing praises to your name, O Lord, for our first one. As you stand and we sing. I sing praises to your name, O Lord. Praises to your name, O Lord. For your name is great and greatly to be praised. I sing praises to your name, O Lord.
Well, good morning. This is a little different for me than last week for sure, because last week I was just showing you a bunch of pictures and talking about things that I did, just having to, I guess, prepare more of a sermon. And I'm not much of a preacher. I like Sunday school. I like taking the Bible and, this is what the Bible says, this is what it means, and, get a little lesson out of it. This is a little different for me, so I'm going to pray before we get started and try to go right into it. Lord, thank you so much for this morning. I thank you for letting us gather here, Lord, among brothers and sisters, Lord, not just random brothers and sisters, but friends, Lord, friends that we know, we live around, and we worship with. And I thank you for our common love we have for this place, Lord, and most of all for you, the love you have for us. I ask you to cleanse my mind and my heart, Lord, now as I try to speak the lesson that you put in my heart. And I do especially pray for the ones who are sick from this virus, Lord. We don't want to play favorites, Lord, but Brother Tim's common to all of us. It's somebody we all care about. We ask you to be with him. And thank you that you have took care of the rest of his family, Lord. I ask that you be with him and his doctors. And we know you're the physician and your plans are supreme, Lord. We just ask that it will work out and we'll give you honor and glory for it. In Jesus' name, amen. Brother Tim asked me the other day about this. I'm sure I got the same notice everybody else got because he didn't know how sick he was going to be and all these things. But the first thing I thought of, or one of the first things I thought of whenever he asked me, was a lesson I've already taught the youth back in Corona, one of our Zoom lessons. Well, back in Corona, like it's over with, earlier during Corona. But it's something that's odd, and I don't know if I've ever heard a lesson about it. And there's probably a reason for that. So whenever we're done, this may be my last chance to speak, but I want to give you a lesson I have learned. I heard a preacher one time say that a preacher lives all of his sermons. He didn't say that you live your sermon and you preach it. But if you preach it, for some reason, it seems like God will put you through that. And I don't understand all of what that means because I'm not a pastor that has a burden for a church like he was, or that does revivals and things. But most of what I teach is stuff that I've gone through. And this is something that I've experienced. And I may be the only one in here. But I'm giving my title, and it may sound unusual to you. If you can't relate to it, then that's good. You're on a better path than I am. Sometimes I get this way. My title is Mad at God. Mad at God. I know we're not supposed to be mad at God. We're not supposed to talk about being mad at God. But sometimes I am. And I'll try to explain that as best I can. Have you ever had something go wrong, out of your control, and it really made you mad? Like, a lot of times things go wrong in my life, and it's clearly my fault. And I get mad at you, or I get mad at Matt, or I get mad at God, or I want to. But when I sit down and realize it's my fault. And that's most of my problems. And there's sometimes that you can point at somebody, and somebody has wronged you, they have robbed you, they have done you wrong in some kind of way. And you can point and say, I'm mad at you. You are the one who has caused me this pain, this trouble. Sometimes we get into a situation in our life to where you just point and point and point, and you keep coming up empty. You roll the spinner of blame, and it doesn't land on anybody. There's just nobody else at fault or nobody else to blame than God. And I think this coronavirus is the greatest example of my lifetime that so many people in so many places can all have the same problem at the same time out of our control. Now, you can blame politicians, you can blame China, you can blame Trump, you can blame the Democrats, you can blame whoever you want to blame. There's all kinds of fingers to point. But the truth about it is, even if some of all that's true, this is out of my control. This is out of Jeremy Haynes' control. This is something that's happening to me. I'm having to deal with it. But I haven't got anybody that I can just go up to and slap because I'm mad about it. Right? So this is kind of my perspective on this. And I've been mad at God way before coronavirus came out. There's been different things in my life that I've had issues with in my own life and in my own heart and my own soul where I was mad about it. And these are some things that I've realized. All right, now I know this sounds kind of strange. So the way I'm presenting this to you is the way my brain works. And in college, we had to do, in high school too, we had to do these things called argumentative essays, where you present a point, and then you argue that point, and hopefully you present a little proof, and you have a conclusion. So I'm going to present this thesis that sometimes I've been mad at God, and I think the Bible's got some things to say about it, and I'm going to come at it from maybe a little unusual angle. So we're going to be in Matthew chapter 25. Now, it's going to be a long time before we get there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time when I get there. My introduction is probably going to take a little longer. I really thought about the seniors, and I know that Haley can relate to this because she just graduated, but they got cheated out of a third of their senior year, right? I mean, she did. Like, it wasn't my fault, it wasn't her fault, but it was something that she didn't get to do that the rest of us pretty much get to do. Now, we don't know yet about the class of 2021. Right now, school's trucking along, but who knows what will happen in the winter. Because, we still have this other thing called flu season that comes around every once in a while, too. So, I mean, there's just no telling what's ahead of us. But we're hoping that this school year goes as planned. But there's a lot of things, and I think about my senior football season. Now, we weren't good at football, but I loved it. And if somebody had taken that from me, some governor in Jackson or president in Washington or God in heaven had taken that from me, it would have really, it'd been hard for me to get over that because it was something I wanted to do, something I enjoyed. I think about lots of things that can go wrong in our life that we want to say that are not particularly our fault. In this corona apocalypse, as I like to call it, there's people who had plans in 2020 to get married. Girls that have been planning this their whole life. They had these wedding plans, and they had all their guest lists made out from the time they were 12 years old, and they had all these things that they were going to do, and all this punch they were going to serve, and all this food they were going to serve, and all these flowers. Well, now you can't even serve people out of the same bowl, much less have people sitting. There's just things that are beyond your control that you might get mad about, and when you go to point the fingers, you come up empty. There's more. I can go into more. I'm sure you know people like this, and this may be you in your life. But I have some people that I'm friends with from the past that on Facebook, they'll show pictures of them and their grandmother inside the nursing home, outside the nursing home window. They're kind of touch hands or hug through the nursing home window because they're not allowed to visit their grandma because of all this stuff. And heaven forbid, you have a loved one who passes away from something. There's people who are dying alone in the hospital. They live their whole life, 60, 70, 80, 90 years, and they've had family, they've had love, and they've served the Lord. Why would the Lord let them die alone? There's plenty of examples. Why did you get corona and I didn't get corona? Why did your whole family get corona and you're the only one who struggled with it? You're the only one who was really sick about it, Why did your child get cancer? Why did you have to do this? Why did your marriage fail and you did all the best you could? Again, my mind, I think of crazy things just over sometimes. If you go to Las Vegas and you get tore drunk for 3 days and you marry a stranger you didn't know and your marriage falls apart, you can probably point the finger at yourself. It's not your fault. But there's lots of things that go wrong that we just can't point a finger at anybody but God. And I'm going to give you some more examples of that. I think a lot of times the problem with me getting mad at God is I get my value sometimes from things. Like, for instance, if they were to cancel this football season, which they thankfully have not so far, I'm proud to be a football coach. I work really hard at it. I'm not great at it, but I work really hard at it. My players work really hard. My other coaches work really hard. And I get a little of my self-pride, a little of my self-esteem from, I do this thing, and people come and watch, and they cheer, and sometimes we're successful. And there's nothing wrong with that in that I feel a little pride in a job well done. If you do your job really well and you do a great job, you should have some value assigned to yourself for a job well done. I teach Lucy that all the time. You get praise for doing a good job, not praise for me doing a good job, and you just come over here and reap the benefits of it. A job well done is worth praising. But this whole summer and spring, there's been so many people who have lost their way in life because they don't have that job to go to. And if it was just a simple thing, I'm not even talking about the financials of it. I'm talking about you getting your value from it. A lot of people, especially when I talk to teenagers a lot of people get their value from their boyfriend and their girlfriend. They got the prettiest girl in school, and that prettiest girl finds the next guy because she's the prettiest girl, she's got options. They're devastated. It may take them a year to get over it, 2 years to get over it, because their identity was, I'm not that great, but we're called dating. Or girls are like that the other way around. My boyfriend is my life, and he's gone now. Or, again, it could be a job or whatever it is that's in your way. I think a lot of times we get our value from things that are so fleeting. And then when those things that are not in part of our control get taken away from us because they weren't in our control anyway, we're lost. Because our value, we are now worthless. Now, you want to check out my YouTube channel. I tell my youth that all the time because they watch YouTube, and that's everybody's slogan on YouTube. Hey, like and subscribe to my channel. But we did, in this Corona Apocalypse, we did have a lot of online things, and I put some things on YouTube, and one of our lessons we did was about getting our self-worth from the Lord, not from ourselves, or from external things. So check out my YouTube channel if you want to catch up with that lesson. But I think that maybe I should repreach that lesson for you to understand. What I'm trying to say is, if your value is from the Lord instead of the other things, then that's a little bit more solid. So let's move on through this. I think about our value coming from the Lord because we're children of the King. You know, when I say I'm a child of the King, I'm not valuable because I'm a child. I'm valuable because of the King. Of the King. My value is from Him. He's our Lord. He's our boss. Now, I've been reading, I love audiobooks. And I've been in this kick where I've been listening to these audiobooks about old England and the Vikings and all that stuff, and all the wars they fought and things. And there's something I've learned in those books that helped me in the Bible in a way, because in 2020 we don't have this perspective so much. But they had these lords and these ladies, and the lord in their day was somebody who had a big chunk of land, a lot of money, and a lot of power, and they had all these citizens that were under them. And if you were a lonely citizen, you didn't have a plot of land, you didn't have any finances, you were going to die. You were going to starve to death, and you were aimless. You were always looking for a Lord. But once you found a Lord, you served that Lord, and you got the good things, the Lord's benefits, the Lord's protection, the Lord's army. You got the Lord's sustenance. You got the Lord's land. And in return, you worked and you gave all your goods to the Lord. And we say that Jesus is the Lord of our life, but we really don't know what we're saying. We're saying He's the boss. He's in control. He is the one I owe it to. He is the one that I'm thankful to, because it's all His anyway. And if the Lord is really the Lord of our life, then when things go beyond our control, it's His anyway to give to us. And I'm going to try to get to my argumentative point here. I think about Job. Now, you can do a whole Bible study on Job about being mad at God, because if anybody had a right to be mad at God, you'd think it would be Job, because he had tons and tons of things go wrong with him. And the only thing the Bible ever said about Job was he was perfect, upright in all his ways, and he didn't curse God. Now, towards the end of the book of Job, whenever things kind of settled down after, I don't know how long the time it was, but tons of time of his family dying, his property being gone, and his wife even turning on him a little bit, and his best friends, the holy deacons of Job Baptist Church, came and gave him the business. I'm like, well, this is what you did, Job. This is what's wrong. Once he finally got through all of that, where everybody's trying to figure out what his problem was, he didn't have the answer. So he kind of was like, well, God, why? And God basically slapped him and said, look, where were you when I created the earth? Where were you when I created the animals? Where were you when I hung the stars? Who are you to ask me this question? And that's kind of how the book ends. God never really gave him an answer of why this happened to him. He just said, Job, here's your great stuff. Job, I'm taking your great stuff away. Job, here's your great stuff again. God proved the point and got glory for it, and Job was just the vessel. Job didn't ask for that life. Job couldn't control that life. And if he was going to be mad, he couldn't be mad at himself. He couldn't be mad at anybody else. It was God's choice. God did it. God got the glory for it. I think that's where I get the most mad, is when I have plans and I have dreams. Me, mine, they don't go my way. And so when things don't go Jeremy's way, Jeremy likes to pound the point. And I think if we can ever get I think the whole key to this, getting over being mad at God, is switching your perspective into thinking you are number one, and realizing that He is number one, and when He's number one, as long as He's getting His way, things are going the right way. But if I'm number one and things are not going my way, then things are not going the best way, and I'm mad about it. I was studying for this back when I taught the youth, and I was actually mowing the grass. I wasn't studying for it at the moment. I was just mowing the grass, and I had my headphones in, and I was listening to, it wasn't even a Bible story, it was just the news, or it was some kind of talk show. But they interviewed Franklin Graham. And you know who Franklin Graham is? He's the guy he's Billy Graham's son. He does the Samaritan's Purse, these Christmas boxes, Operation Christmas Child. He's in charge of that. His whole organization is called Samaritan's Purse. But they do more than just shoe boxes. They do all kind of charities and disaster reliefs and things like that. I think they set up like a field hospital in New York when Corona was really bad. And that's what they were talking to him about. Here's a quote from him, and the things he said. I guess, I'm not sure what the lead-up quote was. It may have been something like, are you scared you're going to get this? Or you're scared you're going to get some backlash? He said, I don't fear what's before me. I belong to God. I've given Him my life to be in His hands. He can take me, spins me, and use me however He wants. spend me. Okay, so I've got $10 in my pocket, and I choose to take one of those dollars and buy a pack of Reese's. That dollar has absolutely no right to look at me and say, I want it to be spent on some new shoes, or I want it to be spent on a new car, or I want it to be spent. It has no choice of how, it has no right. It is my possession. It has no right to say to me how it chooses to be used, because it's not its own, it's mine. And that's what Franklin Graham said. He said, I am not my own. I was my own, or I thought I was my own, but I gave my life to Christ, the Lord. He's the boss. And since I have given my life to him, I am now his to use or to spend me or to keep me or to whatever he wants to do, because I'm not my own. I am his to be spent any way I like. Another example of this, Hebrews 12. I'm almost to Matthew, so Matthew 25 is where we're going to go. Hebrews chapter 12 talks about running the race that's set before you. I noticed that Paul, or whoever wrote Hebrews, it's debatable, but I noticed the writer of Hebrews didn't say, set up the race course before yourself and run it like you like. He didn't say that. He said, run the race that is set before you. So who set the race? Well, I don't know who sets the race, but it wasn't the guy talking, because he said, run the race that is set. And I think sometimes in our life, we want to have this control, we want to have this power over our own destiny, to where we get to make the calls, and we get to call the shots. And you know, you see these bumper stickers that say, Jesus is my co-pilot. And y'all have all heard the rebuttal that everybody said, well, Jesus shouldn't be your co-pilot. Jesus ought to be the pilot. Well, that's true. God is not the co-pilot. He's not the backseat driver. He's not the suggester. He's the boss. And if the boss says left, you left. If the boss says right, you're right. If he says straight, you're straight. And I think sometimes the reason why I get mad at God is because I'm pulling the wheel this way or this way, and that's not the path that the boss is taking me down. So if I don't go the way that the path is being taken, either A, I'm in the ditch, or B, I'm on the road struggling, and I'm mad about it. So this is my scripture. Let's go to Matthew chapter 25. Now this is one you've heard before, and it's not going to be, I'm not going to talk about it from the same angle that I've heard it taught for the most part. I'm trying to make a point. This is where I'm getting into my essay, so I'm trying not to take this out of context. So just bear with me. At the end, if you still think I'm wrong, then I may be wrong. I need somebody to correct me, and I'll get it right, and we'll film a rebuttal. This is called the parable of the talents. Now, I've got in front of me the English Standard Version and the King James Version. I'm going to read the English Standard Version. But in most versions of the Bible that I've seen, this word that I'm going to focus on is the same. It's talents. Verse 14 and 15, it says, for it will be like a man. He's talking about, Jesus is telling stories about how the kingdom of heaven is. So this kingdom of heaven is this, the kingdom of heaven is that. He said, for the kingdom of heaven is like a man going on a journey. He called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another he gave 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability, and then he went away. Okay, these talents here, they're not talents like we use the word talent. This is not, he gave them artistic talent, or this one can play the guitar, and this one can play the drums talent, and this one can draw, and this one can woodwork talent. This is not those kind of talents. These talents are weights and measurements. I guess the best example would be like in Great Britain, they say, instead of dollars, they say pounds. I'm sure that has some history back to where they took gold and silver and weighed it, and you had 3 pounds of silver or 3 pounds of gold, whatever it is. Well, that's what a talent was. A talent was a weight, unit of measurement. So when it says he gave this one 5 talents, he didn't say, art, sports. He didn't give him 5 talents like we think talents. He gave him 5 talents of money, probably silver. 5 talents of silver, 5 talents of gold. So this is the story. Let's just read. I'm going to read the whole thing. Verse 16. He who had received 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. The old King James says, the joy of your Lord. And again, sometimes we think Lord means God and not boss. He says master. Enter into the joy that your master has. Verse 21, same story. Verse 20. I don't know where I stop. Verse 21. His master said, well done, you enter in the joy of your master. Verse 22. He also who had 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you didn't sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. He said, you're the big boss. You do what you want to do, and if you didn't, you're in charge of things that you're not even in charge of things. You're the boss. Verse 25, so I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. So he gave him his 1 talent back. But his master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reaped where I had not sown, and gathered where I had scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and in my coming I should have received what was mine with some interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. Verse 29, for to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. And to the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. Okay, so summarize the story. 3 servants. One got 5 talents, one got 2 talents, one got 1 talent. The one with 5 went and wheeled and dealed and worked in the markets, invested, whatever he did. He took his 5, invested, and made 5 more. So now the master's got 10 talents. The one with 2 did the same thing. He took his 2, he invested, he worked, he traded, whatever he did in the market or in the world, he made 2 talents and 4 talents. So now he gave it back to his master. What you gave me plus more. The one with 1 talent, though, he was scared. Well, that was his excuse. He could be scared, he could be lazy, he could be wicked, whatever you want to say. But he didn't do anything. He took the talent, hid it in the dirt, and gave the talent back to his master. And the master's like, look, you could at least put it in the bank. I mean, bank's interest is bad, but it'd be better than 0. You could at least give me my 1 talent back with some interest. If you had done nothing, but instead of digging your hole, put it in the ground, just go get the bank over there. I've been better off. This master could have kept the talent in his pocket, took it to the foreign country with him, and brought it back, and he would have been just as well off as what this servant did for him. He did nothing for him. So this is the story. But what I notice about this is there's 3 different results. 5 talents to 10, 2 talents to 4, 1 talent to 1. There's 3 different results. But there's only 2 different statements or 2 different conclusions that the master makes. 2 different responses. I notice that the master wasn't mad at the guy with 4 talents because he didn't have 10. And he wasn't mad at the guy with the 1 talent for not having 10 or not having 4. The guy who had 5 got 10, he said, well done, good and faithful servant. The guy who had 2 and got 4, well done, good and faithful servant. 2 different results, same response. The only response that was different was the one who had 1 talent and didn't do anything. What I find from that is, I didn't find a discussion in this text. You read it with me. And maybe there's one in Matthew or Mark or John or Luke, which I don't know which one I just read Matthew. Maybe Mark, Luke, or John had this story in a different version of it. But in my study of the Bible, I haven't ever found any more details that told me that servant 1, 2, and 3 got together and had a powwow and said, all right, you take the 5, and I'm going to take the 2, and you take the 1. I didn't find that conversation. I didn't see where the talents were just dished out in a pile and they just divvied them up. I don't see where the master did a whole bunch of interviewing processes and said, how many talents do you think you can handle? No, the master said, you, here's 5. You, here's 2. You, here's 1. It was completely the master's choice who got what. Run the race that is set before you. He didn't say set your race. Run the race that is set before you. That bothers me in some ways because I want to compare myself to somebody else. I want to compare myself to the Sunday school teacher down the hall. Or I want to be holy and compare myself to the Apostle Paul. So far in my life, unless something changes, I'm probably not going to be as effective for the Lord's kingdom as the Apostle Paul was. He's kind of the number 1 guy, right? We looked at. He was the best. So if I'm getting my value and my worth based on how I compare to Paul, I'm not going to be very fulfilled in this life. Or if I'm comparing Franklin Graham to Billy Graham. I mean, who would you say has accomplished more? But I noticed that the master didn't make that comparison. We like to compare ourselves to each other. But the master said, here's 5, here's 2, here's 1. Good and faithful, good and faithful. I guess my point to this is this. So what if things go poorly in your life that are beyond your control? Yes, maybe you didn't reach the goal you wanted. Yes, maybe you have more heartache. Yes, maybe you have more health problems. Yes, maybe you're doing your best to serve the Lord and you're not getting the results you wanted. But God is not comparing you to a number of results. God, our Master, our Lord, our gold giver is in this town example. He is the one that says, this is what you've got to work with. He just wants to see what we do with the situations that we're given. How else could it be any other way? If my kids grow up healthy and holy and happy, and your kid has a tragedy in their life, and again, I'm not trying to belittle it as an example, these are real things that people have in their life and struggle with. Or if your wife or your husband has a car wreck and they're paralyzed, or their brain functions are impaired, well, you're probably not going to be able to go and do some of the things that the next couple was. So is God mad at you? Or are you a failure because something went wrong in your life that you can't control? Do you have the right to be mad at God about it? I don't think so. And I think that the key to this is in the responses. He said, good and faithful servant, good and faithful servant. He didn't say, great faithful servant for 10, pretty good faithful servant for 2. And we all know, number 1 over there, he screwed it up. We're not going to talk about him. But he didn't differentiate between the 10 and the 4. I think that a realization I've made in my life is that God is more interested in what I do with what he gives me than what I do compared to you. And that's hard for me as a human because I can't see God's whole plan before me from now until eternity. I can't see it all. I got to go step by step day at a time. But I can see you. I can see how you're doing. And on the flip side of that, sometimes I'm not just mad at God if I'm not as good as you. Sometimes I pat myself on the back if maybe I am a little better than you. Either one of those two things, that's not the goal. Let me give you 3 examples here. 2 of them are good, 1 of them is ridiculous. It's just, you get good and you get bad. So just bear with me. Let me give you 2 examples where I think the Bible proves my point. Has anybody ever heard of Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah? He's named after me. If y'all know Jeremiah the prophet. No, they just knew I was coming and I was going to be great. So they named me. So Jeremiah the prophet. And you all know Jonah the prophet. Now, to my study, and to the people who I've talked to about this, Jeremiah was called into his prophetorial ministry at a very early age. He pretty much all his life, from the time he was a young man to the time he died, he served the Lord. And there's very few times that you see that he did anything that you can even consider to be wrong. Nobody's perfect. But this was an upright, godly man who preached and preached and preached and was punished for it. He was tortured for it. He got thrown in jail for it. He had a rough go of it. And to my knowledge, this is the killing part. I don't know of any recorded instance where anybody ever repented and turned back to God as a result of his preaching. He was in a failing state. Israel and Judah were headed into captivity. They were wicked, left and right. Everything they were doing was wrong. And Jeremiah preached his heart out for his whole life, and nobody listened to him. The same result happened. Israel went to pot, Judah went to punishment and captivity, and Jeremiah died. Preached his whole life. No results. Is God mad at him? Okay, so let's take example number 2. Jonah. Maybe the biggest knucklehead in the whole Old Testament that God actually used to get something done. Jonah's story was, hey, there's a wicked country over there in Nineveh. Jonah says, all right, I see that wicked country. Then he goes that way. He runs away. God has him literally take a ship crew, throw him overboard, take a whale or a great fish or a sea monster of some sort, swallow him, and then take him where he was supposed to go and spit him out on the ground to get him to where he was going. Well then, instead of spending his whole life in this ministry, the Bible says that the city was about 3 days' journey. I haven't looked at the detail. This is not a lesson on Jonah, so you can check my details. But basically, Jonah went into the city, preached as he went, and then got on the other side of the city as fast as he could. Then he got on the other side of the city and pouted about it. He was mad at God the whole time. He was mad at God for this, he was mad at God for that. He stayed mad at God. Guess what happened as a result of his preaching? Probably the biggest revival in the history of the world. The biggest recorded instance. I have never heard of 100,000+ people turning to Christ. Have you? Not from one weekend revival? The Bible, I looked at this morning. It said that Nineveh was a city of 120,000, plus the ones who didn't know their right hand from their left hand. The experts think that means like little kids that don't even know right and left yet, so the youngest. So 120 plus thousand people. Now, there may have been a few in there who just went along with the crowd, but the gist that the Bible tells us is that whole city turned to God as a result of Jonah's 3-day revival that he was mad about, probably the whole time. Because when he got done with it and God saved the city, he pouted about it and complained to God about it. So my question is, which one's going to get more pat on the back from the master? Now, again, I'm not here hating on Jonah. He did what he was supposed to do, reluctantly or not. He did what he was supposed to do. God accomplished a great thing for him. But I just don't find anywhere in the Bible where Jonah said, hey, let me get that Nineveh ministry. And Jeremiah said, hey, let me get that preach my whole life, get thrown in prison ministry with no results. They did not get to choose the path that was set before them. So my perspective is that if they didn't get to choose it, God must not hold them responsible for the path. What he does hold us responsible for with what we did while he was gone with the 2 talents, with the 5 talents, with the 1 talent he gave. Again, you can say that's your singing talent, and that might be the talent he's giving you, or it could be your teaching talent, or whatever it is. But what I'm saying is, whatever he's given you to work with, whatever path he set before you, you will be judged upon how you did with what he gave you, not with what somebody else did with what they gave them, and how you did compared to them. And I think that Jonah and Jeremiah are the 2 most obvious examples I think of. Here's Zebulun 3, and I'll be done. I like to cook pancakes. There's a couple reasons why I like to cook pancakes. One is because I'm super impatient. And you make me cook something better than pancakes in the oven, it's going to take 45 minutes. But I'm going to be forgot that I even put something in the oven and be lucky if I don't burn it, because 45 minutes is a long time for me to pay attention. I like cooking pancakes because you can put them yogurt in there and you can watch them cook. And then, you get a little ahead and you try to flip them over and they're done. It's full-time entertainment while you're cooking. Plus, you can put some syrup on them and they're really good. In college, I was known, I'm not saying worldwide, but my roommates, they knew, hey, Friday mornings, let's get Jeremy to cook some pancakes. And my pancakes, I was a pancake cook. They may have been better than me at it, but I was willing. I enjoy cooking pancakes. Man, I throw some bacon in there sometimes, crumbled up, or chocolate chips in there, or some strawberries. I cook. This is what I know about cooking pancakes. You can have the most non-stick pan in the world. It doesn't matter. Pancake batter is the stickiest stuff they've ever come up with. The worst thing you can ever do when you're cooking pancakes is drop your spoon into the batter, because then you got to dig that thing out with your fingers or get another spoon, and you got to wash it, because you can't cook the rest of your meal touching pots and pans and potholes and stuff with that pancake. You got to stop what you're doing. You got to wash the batter off, because it is sticky. Mom cooked pancakes, and she'd have a square pan. I don't know how you cook a round pancake in a square pan. She'd have a square skillet, and I noticed her. She could cook 4 at a time, because she put one over here, one over here, 4 of them. But if you mess up with that first pancake and put it in the dead middle, you just got to wait. You can't put anything around it, because you cannot move that pancake. When you put that pancake in there, it is stuck. And if you go to try to move it, you're going to just mess everything up. You're going to have pancake batter all over the pan. It's going to be a micrometer thick. It's going to crisp up. It's going to turn black. It's no good. You can't move it. So if you got a nonstick pan, or if you got your pan good and greased, you can move that pancake. But you can't move it instantly. What you got to do is, you got to leave that pancake in there for a little while on that heat. And what will happen whenever that heat's applied to it, it'll begin to let go of that pan. It'll form a crust, right? I mean, this is not rocket. I'm not making it sound like I just discovered this and you don't know. But if you let that thing cook, it'll begin to lift up from that pan a little bit to where, after a couple minutes, you slide that thing around. You can flapjack it, like they do on TV. You can flip it up in the air. But you can't do that when you first apply it. What has to happen to that pancake batter is, has to have a little heat applied to it for a little while. And while that heat's been applied to it, whatever clinging that pancake has to that pan, it has to let go. It lets go little by little by little by little by little until it's finally usable for what its purpose was, to cook the other side and then put on your plate. But if that pancake never lets go of that pan, then it's worthless. It's caused a mess in the pan, it didn't give you any nutrition, it's probably frustrated you, and it's made a big pile of mess. I think that Jeremy Hanks, and again, this is for me. I should just put a mirror right here and I haven't looked at y'all. I think that most of the times I have messes in my life where I'm in this heat. The heat's turned up. The corona's kicked me out of school. The cancer is done this, or I've lost my job, or my wife is, or whenever I'm in the heat. And I'm saying, it's your fault. the best thing that happens to me is the longer the heat's applied, the more I let go of whatever it was that was so precious to me that I was holding on to, that was out of my control anyway. And what makes me not mad at God anymore is not He rushes me with a blessing. What makes me not mad at God anymore is because my perspective changed. He was right for the whole time. He was always right. Maybe I didn't like this, maybe I didn't like that, but He was always right. And it took some heat because I'm stubborn. But once the heat was applied, and I sat in that heat long enough, and I held on as tight as I could to what I wanted, as I began to let go, things got all right. And maybe the heat was still on. Maybe I still had to cook my whole other side. Maybe the heat wasn't finished. But I became a good servant again. I became a good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master. Not because I was better than this or I was better than this, because what was holding me down, I let go of it. And some of these things are not bad things. It's not bad to love your wife and your kids and your job. Those are not bad things. But if you ever think that that's more valuable to you than what God has for you, there's people in this church we know who have lived their whole life, done this and that and other, and all of a sudden they get called to preach as an old person or an elderly person or a middle-aged person, not Jeremiah, young kid age. Or maybe you, Brother David Singleton, I talked about last week, he was pastor in the United States of America as a almost retirement age preacher. He's now a missionary. But the only way that could happen is if you let go of what you're holding on to. Good or bad. It's not bad to be a pastor. But it's bad for you to be a pastor in Tennessee if God wants you to be a missionary in Guatemala. Whatever it is that you're supposed to do, you're not going to do that effectively while you're holding tight to the bars of whatever it is that you can't live without. And the faster you learn to let go and let God, the faster you get over being mad at the most precious relationship you've got in your life. And you get further down the track. And maybe when your life is over with, you look back and say, well, I didn't do good as Eddie Mack, or I didn't do good as Franklin Graham, or I didn't do good as the Apostle Paul, or I didn't do, that's okay. The judgment will be based on, did you take your 5 and make 10? Did you take your 2 and make 4? Or did you take your 1 and make nothing? And that is a lesson that I've had to learn. Because I'm not even seeing, I wasn't even affected supremely by this coronavirus. So many other people were. But that's what put in my head. It could be anything. One of these days, Lord, when this coronavirus is going to be over with, and you're still going to have a problem that comes up in your life, that you can either be mad at God about it, or you can say, God, I'm Job, and I don't know what you're doing. But you're doing it, so help me let go of it until you can fix it. Now, if you're going through these struggles in life, and I'll close with this, if you're going through these struggles in life and you're not serving the Master, you do not have a good Lord of your life, then yeah, you got to commit right. You're going to be mad all the time, because just like the Bible says it rains on the just and the unjust. So if you're a sinner that's never been saved by God's amazing grace, your life's still going to have bumps and turns and crashes and stuff. The difference is you don't have that hope. You don't have that joy of the Lord set before you. So my prayer is for the Christian here who is mad at God, or has been mad at God, or will be mad at God again, that you get your focus on Him. And maybe it won't take as much heat to get your mind right as it does me. Maybe you won't have to cook so long. But the cooking's coming, so get ready to let go. And if you've never been saved, if you've never turned to Christ as your Lord and Savior, the heat's coming for you too. But I want you to have that hope to hold on to, that we have to hold on to. So whatever business you might need to do with the Lord, this is the time to do it. Again, we'll have a song of invitation. We're not going to take 35 minutes and beg and point and make you write on the card, but if the Lord is dealing with your heart, whatever it is, this is your time to deal with that. And I'm going to pray, and then John, I'm going to turn back over to you. Dear Lord, thank you for this day, and I thank you now for these hard lessons that you've taught me. They weren't always fun in the middle of it. But I ask you for the next time, because I believe that there'll be a next time that something hard will happen to me, that you'll help me not to be so hard-headed, and that I'll learn to love you most of all and not be so consumed with these other things, good or bad as they may be. Help me to be a humble, submissive Christian that you can spend, and that I can honor my Lord. I thank you for the talents you do give me, Lord. I just ask that you help me make the best of it. Help us all to just learn to love you supremely as you love us. In Jesus' name.
Please stand. We're going to sing, Pass Me Not Unto the Savior.
Thank you, Jeremy. Enjoyed it. Very, very good. The reason I got back up here because I was told that people on Facebook can't hear y'all or anybody that's standing down here. Y'all remember, Ms. Connie Brewer had the shoulder surgery, last few days, and, Joe Harris's mom, Ms. Maudlin Harris, broke her hip bone. Y'all remember her, and be sure to remember Brother Tim and Melissa and their family this week. So, anything else need to be said before we leave? Rick Pickett, you dismiss us in the word of prayer.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you and praise you for being good to us, and thank you for the word